Joe Biden's gaffes are nothing new. We've come to expect his absent stares, word salads, and frequent stumbles. But despite this very obvious decline, Joe Biden has always maintained a grip on power. He's fronted up to the press and travelled to several countries on official business. He has, for the most part, been an active and present leader. But cracks are starting to appear in Joe Biden's leadership. As well as plunging support from Americans, Joe Biden is also losing the trust of his own party, with Democrats ensuring Joe Biden is merely a figurehead and not a key decision maker. Sky News All Stars Rita Panahi, Paul Murray and Dave Rubin take a deep dive into the presidency and ask, has Joe Biden lost his grip on power? Joe Biden is no stranger to gaffes. They have, after all, been a hallmark of his presidency. But with progressing age also comes increased physical and mental frailty, reveals Sky News All-Star Rita Panahi.
This performance, I've got to say, is just astonishing. This is a man who is not all there, it's quite clear. And look for the bewildered look the female photographer gives the president.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me for the benediction. Most holy God, we thank you.
Oh, Greg, he wandered off before the closing benediction. I mean, do not tell me this man is cognitively sound.
No, you're absolutely right, Rita. I mean, allowing Joe Biden to continue in office, much less to run for the presidency again, is really a form of elder abuse.
Sky News All-Star Paul Murray agrees.
We all know that stumbling Joe Biden is too old for the presidency as he decays before our very eyes. But apparently, according to parts of the American media, the media's too mean about flippy-floppy Joe.
Joe Biden's constant mistakes have caused Americans to turn on him. They no longer trust that he can be the strong and stable president they need, which is not good news for his re-election hopes.
They need a new line. The line is, we'll watch him. Well, we've watched him walk and see him fall. We watched him talk and forget people's names. And we watched him work and we watched him fall asleep in Maui, at the UN, and at the beach. They need a new line because that is not working anymore, especially after we saw those numbers.
The president's public appearances have turned from adoring fans to boos.
It turns out Joe Biden is the one who is attracting the boos of an ungrateful nation. How ungrateful can they be? It's almost like people in America don't appreciate the roaring success of Bidenomics.
And the nation is starting to realise something is very wrong with their president.
You're not going to believe this, Paul, but a certain amount of people in America, through watching things via videotape and on the internet, are starting to realize that something is wrong with Joe Biden. I mean, look, it's been obvious to all of us. It was obvious to most of us well before he was elected to be president of the United States. But the longer the farce goes on, the longer this charade where, he can't read properly off the prompter, he wanders off into the greenery, all of the rest of it. More and more people, if nothing else, if not the policies, which are pretty bad, and Bidenomics and the border that's open and all of that stuff, enough people are realizing, oh, maybe we shouldn't have this 80-year-old plus guy who's confused about names and what his son is doing for a living and everything else as president. But, never overestimate the ability for people to vote the wrong way. So I am not counting anything just yet.
Joe Biden's own party has even turned on him. rolling him out as a figurehead for public engagements, but stripping away all other responsibilities behind the scenes.
President Biden is the oldest president in U.S. history. Why does White House staff treat him like a baby?
No one treats the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, like a baby.
So there's this book that says
that's ridiculous.
When staff
that's a ridiculous
back,
claim.
Why do you think it is that in a Wall Street Journal poll, 2/3 of Democrats think President Biden is too old to run again?
Look, here's what I know. Here's what I can speak to. I can speak to that a president who has wisdom. I can speak to a president who has experience.
And during his recent diplomatic visit to Vietnam, Joe Biden's microphone was cut off mid-speech when he started mumbling incoherently.
We talked about at the conference overall, we talked about stability, we talked about making sure that the third world, the Southern Hemisphere had access to change it, had access. It wasn't confrontational at all.
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you bringing U.S. strategic interests above the rights here in Vietnam?
I've raised it with every person I've met with.
Mr. President,
are you worried about your son being indicted, Mr. President?
All of this has sent the Democrats into a tailspin.
Joe Biden cannot make it through a second term. He can barely get through this first term. His supporters and the people around him are nervous every time he speaks in public, every time he falls up the stairs going on to Air Force One, every time he does campaign events. He is declining rapidly at this point. So the Democrats are in panic mode. They want to replace him. Of course, they can't do it right now because that would make him the lamest of all lame duck presidents. So what I suspect is very likely is he will remain the figurehead, the nominee, whatever, until about New Year's, maybe early spring. And then they will quietly, usher him out, and we'll probably end up with someone like Gavin Newsom, or maybe even Bernie Sanders. Who knows at this point? But yes, there's a very significant chance that he will leave and will not be the nominee.
Despite Joe Biden's increased frailty, he's determined to run for re-election. But Sky News All-Star Alex Stein is adamant the president will not be a candidate in 2024.
No, I think you're spot on. I think it's pretty obvious that Kamala is going to be the president before 2024 because they can only find so much cocaine in the White House and continue to cover for Joe Biden. So Hunter Biden will be the fall guy, whether it's one of these bogus gun charges or it's going to be something more serious like the illegal business deals he did with Ukraine or China. So I believe personally that Joe Biden will not finish his campaign or his presidency and will not run in 2024. 100% zero chance of him running, in my opinion.
With Joe Biden's grip on power non-existent, some commentators fear Kamala Harris might have to step up to the top job.
Yeah. Let's not forget that Joe Biden was, like Kamala Harris, considered a completely unelectable dud when he went into the 2020 primaries. He had already run 3 failed presidential campaigns at that time, but this time, 2020, was different. Why? Because they realized that he was a good frontman for the Democrats, and this is how it works. To be also a frontman for Barack Obama, who quite correctly assumed that Biden could be a prop by which he could keep his hand in Washington. That's why the Washington blob, the swamp, the elites rallied around him, media and bureaucracy and intelligence agencies combined. Not because they thought Joe Biden was brilliant or an original thinker. No, because for the blob, that's the last thing they want. Because they wanted him to be there as someone they could control. Which, mark my words, has set up the playbook for Kamala Harris or her backers as Joe Biden's mental and moral failings pile up and become ever more apparent.
But even with a decaying Joe Biden, the vice president is still not the top pick for the job.
If Biden does the right thing and steps down or is forced to go, it ain't getting any better. Enter Kamala Harris, who this week declared her readiness to take on the top job.
Every vice president understands that when they take the oath, that they must be very clear about the responsibility they may have to take over the job of being president. I am no different.
And I'll bring you some of her highlights with Lara Trump a little bit later on. I'm not being mean here either, but she is nowhere near capable of leading the free world. Could you imagine?
And with no other viable alternatives, many within the White House have turned to Democrat faithful Barack Obama to take control of the deteriorating situation.
That's the question then. If Joe Biden isn't running things, well, who is? And whispers have been growing that the guy really pulling the strings is this man, Barack Obama. Now, observers have noted that for some time the former president has been acting behind the scenes like, well, a bit of a string puller. Having an addled president like Joe Biden, who literally used COVID as an excuse to campaign from his basement, gave Obama all the more reason to hang around D.C. For one thing, he was able to put his people into the executive branch because, as they say in Washington, personnel is policy. That's another way of saying that who you appoint determines how you govern. And as a result, the Biden administration is still, quite consciously and by design, loaded with Obama appointees. Many people have called it a third Obama term. More than 60% of Biden's original official cabinet were Obama appointees.